Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Gulf Shores and Orange Beach Tourism is the sponsor of our episode today. Warm temps and fresh seafood make the Alabama Gulf Coast the perfect beach destination for your family vacation, couples getaway, outdoor adventure, meetings, conferences, and conventions. Our guest today is Scott Bannon. Scott is the director of the Marine Resources Division for the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Scott, it is a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Fantastic. And I have to share with you right up front, even though I have this northernish kind of voice, I actually lived in Alabama for a year in the early 90s. I was in Montgomery, Alabama, and I was on a project for the state's Medicaid agency. And I
consider you an Alabamian then, if you've been here for any extended period of time. I'm originally from Kentucky, but I've been here over 30 years. So I'm an Alabamian at heart now.
All right. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first got to Alabama and I walked into the office where I was working and the account manager came up to me, she didn't say, "Hi, Howard, we're so happy that you're here." She said, or asked this question, "Who is your allegiance to?"
Oh, so whether you're an Alabama or an Auburn fan. So
Yeah.
when you're not from here, it's not bred into you and it's not quite as ingrained. And so my default answer is I support all the teams of Alabama. So it's kind of my political cop out because I love all sports. I love promoting any of the universities and institutions of Alabama. So at the end of the day, I have a few more Alabama Roll Tide socks and shirts than I do some of the other schools, but
Okay.
I cheer for all of them in Alabama.
That's fantastic. Yeah. My response was whoever you want me to support. So that was it.
Well, cheer for. That usually works well.
There you go. Well, I am very excited that you took some time out of your day to join us on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The work we're doing with Gulf Shores and Orange Beach Tourism is just a great lead-in to a conference that I'm going to be attending down in Gulf Shores later on this September. And as a podcaster and very interested in the outdoor space, the role that departments of conservation and natural resource play in just stewarding the state's outdoor resources and the conservation. But what I love, given that we'll be in Gulf Shores soon and down on the Orange Beach, et cetera, is Alabama has a pretty significant, though maybe not a huge, but a very significant marine component to it. And I would love if you could first share a little bit about your background so we can learn a little more about you. And like you said, you came from Kentucky, but you've been down here for a while, but share a little bit about your background with our audience. And then let's talk about your work at the Marine Resources Division.
Sure. So I am the rare individual that I'm in my dream job. Growing up as a kid in Kentucky, we grew up on lakes and rivers, and I loved being outdoors. I remember the Kentucky State Water Patrol. They don't exist anymore, but the officer at the boat show letting me play in the boat. I went to conservation camp as a kid. The Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Department had a conservation camp. And so when I graduated high school, I said, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to do something different. So I joined the Coast Guard, and I had never seen saltwater, made that decision. So I joined the Coast Guard. I spent about 5.5 years on active duty, spent time in the Caribbean, up in New England. A great background for where I am today. I ended up in Alabama and met a young lady from Mississippi, and we decided that we'd make Alabama our home. And so I applied for the Department of Conservation, and I got a job and became a conservation enforcement officer. And I tell everybody, I said, again, it's a dream job. I get to go out in the outdoors almost every day. I got to go interact with the public who was out enjoying the outdoors. And of course, we get to enforce the law, and that's sometimes good and bad. I like to catch the people who are deliberately trying to abuse what we have here. And then sometimes it's really about educating folks. And that's the best part of the job, is to educate folks. So I worked my way up through the ranks as an enforcement officer. And ultimately, I became the division director, which is kind of a unique position. So I was on the enforcement side, but we have about 40 biologists and we have about 19 enforcement officers. And so I kind of sit at the top of that triangle. And I have a chief of enforcement and a chief science officer that work for me. And so together, we manage and regulate all the saltwater species in Alabama, which is shrimp, crabs, oysters, all the finfish offshore, which is kind of a unique aspect that we help with all the Gulf states to regulate federal fisheries. So it's a very dynamic job. And it's sometimes under recognized here in Alabama because we do have such a small coastline. You mentioned that it's about 56 miles straight across, but we have Mobile Bay and the Delta, the Mobile River Delta system is considered America's Amazon. So the diversity of species in Alabama is actually, it's one of the most diverse ecosystems in the country here in 2 counties in Alabama. So we're very, very proud of that. And I take it very, very serious that the role that we play not only impacts the citizens of South Alabama, but the entire region and actually the entire United States. As you said, you were from somewhere else. You came and visited Alabama. We get visitors from all over the United States and all over the world. And so I want to make sure that we have the best opportunities available for them to come and enjoy the great outdoors in Alabama.
That's fantastic. And what I love about this opportunity to chat with you, Scott, is when I lived in Alabama, and I would admit too, I never did get down to the Gulf. I passed through Mobile
Sure.
and I knew about the beaches, the white beaches, and just how wonderful they were. But it never dawned on me to truly appreciate the water, the salt water, and then all the species that you have just talked about, the oysters, the fish, and other of our creatures. When you are working with locals and doing your work, and in addition to the enforcement, but doing the science of the work, what's the breadth of those activities? I mean, that are required for you to keep this 50-mile long straight line healthy, and also the delta, the Mobile Bay and the delta in that area. What goes into this full-time job of keeping this area healthy?
So it's an elephant that we eat one bite at a time.
Okay.
When you look at the area, so we're ultimately responsible for about 1,200 square miles of land and water. And fishing in Alabama between salt and fresh water is about $1 billion a year. So it's a very lucrative business. But in addition to that is we provide food for the citizens of this country. So the shrimp, the crabs, the oysters that are harvested here, that goes to feed the people. And that's a very important thing for us. And it's a domestic product. It's a safe product. And so we want to make sure that that's always available so that the public has access to fresh seafood. But also locally, those are jobs. That's important to what we do here in Alabama, is that we help support the people that live here with these jobs, and that their children and their grandchildren. And that's my goal. Everything I do is not geared towards the person. My goal is that I gear everything towards at least that I've looked that far down the road to make sure that the decisions that we make here as an agency are going to be good ones for as far off as their grandchildren. And sometimes that means the here and now decisions are very difficult, and those are tough. But I tell everyone I have a great staff. I have an amazing staff. The work that they do, the research that our scientists do here, down to our field level folks who they literally go catch fish and shrimp and oysters and do water monitoring and dockside surveys where they talk to people at the ramp and they measure their fish and talk about the socioeconomic impacts. And so all of these things come together to individual staff members who compile data that makes its way up the chain to me, to where they say, hey, here's some decisions that we think need to be made to ensure that we continue to keep this resource. And then there are so many factors outside of our control that impact what we do. Water quality. And I tell everybody that doesn't necessarily mean pollution. Water quality is everything that impacts that water. and we're at the downstream end of a major river system. So things that happen all across the central part of the country, they work their way down here. So we have to deal with that. And oftentimes that's outside of our control. So we learn to mitigate those impacts. We prepare for those impacts, and then we try and educate folks and make positive change. So every day, I mentioned to you earlier, is it's an adventure for me. I don't have a job. If I had a job, I'd quit. So I get to come to work and I get to deal with the challenges that we're faced with, but I get to face it with an amazing staff who have a passion that I do. And I tell everyone, I said, again, I'm in my dream job, being able to do what I do. And I have a passion for what we do. And the only insult that I've ever taken personal is if someone says, I don't care. I'm a government employee. I don't make enough money not to care. There are lots of things I could do, but that are different. That if money was my motivating factor, it's about giving back to the public and ensuring that we have a resource here. And I care about the resource. I care about the people around the resource and the impacts that it has. So I think at the end of the day, everybody should want my job.
I love when I hear someone say how much they love what they do. They don't say, to a certain extent, I love my job. Because to me, I always say jokingly, it's a job. But when you love what you do and you get up and you enjoy it and you look forward to it, that's what I hope for my guests, obviously, like yourself, but my clients that I coach as a career development coach. You should enjoy what you're doing and look forward to it every day. I am curious, you mentioned the river system. I remember when living in the state, I used to travel through many of the counties because we would work with the local healthcare providers on their claims. I remember, for example, like up in the Muscle Shoals area, the water up there. Are you also responsible for the systems and the lakes and the rivers as they're making their way into the state and down and feed it uh, into the
So we have
Gulf
a
or Mobile?
we have a multitude of agencies that are responsible for things there. So my jurisdiction, so to speak, ends really at Interstate 10, which is what bisects Mobile Bay, right at the northern end of Mobile Bay. But
Okay.
our department, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, we have a Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries Division. So that Tennessee River system that starts up there, crosses the Tennessee line, comes into Alabama.
Mhm.
So the fisheries and the things that go on there are the responsibility of the Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries Division. But also we work with the Alabama Department of Public Health, the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, as well as many other federal regulators to ensure that these waterways are healthy and that
Mhm.
the fisheries that occurs in each of those river systems are sustainable. So it is a group effort. Nobody's alone in this, but department has the influence over the entire state.
Okay. What would be a typical day in the life of Scott Bannon?
So I don't sleep well, so I'm usually up pretty early. So I check emails and respond really early. And some people are like, "Hey, it was kind of early when you sent that email." But I like to get a grip of what's going on in the world each day, because there are also some things our agency, our enforcement guys also do things like search and rescue. We help participate in counterterrorism and national security things when they occur down here. So there are other things besides just resource issues that are concerning for us.
Mhm.
Uh, but I kind of get a grip on the day, and then I have a calendar like everyone else that I have a series of meetings each week, and it's a very dynamic calendar. My wife and my two bosses, my wife and the administrative assistant, try and do a good job of keeping me on task and reminding me of where I need to be each week. But in any given day, I could be meeting with someone like you, doing an interview about what we do. I'm actually going to leave from here and I'm going to go meet with a town council to talk about a project that we're doing there. This morning, I had a discussion with our engineers about some other construction projects we have going on to help support the resources here. I left last week a week-long series of meetings with the Gulf of Mexico Fisheries Management Council. That's a lot of words, where we regulate the federal fisheries, where 5 states get together, including the federal government, and try and make good decisions. So every day is different. Every day is dynamic. And every day is amazing to me. And I never, like you mentioned earlier, JOB, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as an opportunity every day to make decisions that help the folks that I care about. And at the end of the day, I may have made 100 decisions during the day. And my standard is, did I do what I thought was the best for the most? And if the answer is yes, go to sleep. If I felt like maybe I messed it up a little bit, then I'm gonna say, how can I do this better next time? What can I do to improve on the decisions we made today? I have a mousetrap theory. I give my supervisors a mousetrap with a sticker that says, how do I make this better? And every
Uh,
day, look at that mousetrap. And one day you're like, it's just a mousetrap. And the next day you come in and you see they make a new spring that might make this mousetrap work faster or more efficient. Maybe it just makes it look more pleasant. Maybe it makes it safer. Maybe it makes it better for the person working the trap. Sometimes we forget that I need to make things better for my staff and make things enjoyable for my staff. So that's my mousetrap theory. And that's how I face every day.
I love it. And when you mentioned mousetrap, you brought back memories from many years ago in high school when we had the physics class and had to build that mousetrap. So thanks for in the
Look
vault
down
for a
memory
minute.
lane.
So I'm curious, what are some of the projects, if you're able to share,
Sure.
that you're working on now to either expand some of the services that your uh, state is providing and you're spearheading through your work? What are some of the projects that are going on down in the Gulf area?
So I'm going to give you two examples. I'm going to talk about oystering in Alabama, and I'm going to talk about artificial reefs in Alabama. So oystering is, well, oysters are a very interesting critter, and that's what I tell folks. They're more than just to eat. They are required to have a healthy waterway and a healthy ecosystem. So no matter what else happens, we have to have oysters in our estuarine areas because they filter the water. They provide food sources for a variety of different marine species. So outside of us harvesting them and providing jobs and eating them because they taste good, they just play a vital role in the ecosystem. So I have to make sure that we are making good decisions and we're making things uh, appropriately, doing things appropriately to ensure that our oyster, uh, uh, our naturally occurring oyster reefs are abundant, that they're healthy and they're growing. So that's our goal now. Is we suffered some drought years, and oysters don't like droughts. That allows predators to get in on them. And we had two hurricanes in a row in 2004 and 2005. So they were very hard on our oyster population. And the water has changed. The way the water flows into Mobile Bay has changed over history because of development along the shorelines and different things that occur in the waterways. So areas that historically may have had oysters now don't. So we're working on projects to expand our natural reef system. Some areas where the oysters have died on the bottom, we realize that there's no oxygen down there. The water flow changed. So we're doing what we call a mounds and furrows project, where we elevate that bottom and pile oyster shell up to allow small oysters to catch above that dead zone. And then they can grow in an oxygenated level of the water. And so we've been into that for about 2 years. It's showing some success there. We developed a grid system for harvest in Alabama. So we needed to maximize the benefit for our local catchers and understand to the smallest degree that we could, where are people harvesting and how much is coming off of there and how much resource are we leaving. So we have a 500 square meter grid system. So we can open and close and play Tetris 500 square meters at a time and move oyster catchers around and identify what the bottoms look like in a 500 square meter area. There is no other state that does it anywhere in the United States that manages down to that level. And so we're very proud of that. Now it's a small area compared to some states, but it's a very vital area. So we work very, very hard to increase that. We are working on things to make access for our catchers safer. We have very limited boating access areas. So we've been working with some local municipalities in the county to develop areas where we can get these catchers into the water, get them away from busy highways and make their life safer. That's always a concern for us to ensure that we do things safely. And then after that, our artificial reef program in Alabama is, I say, the premier artificial reef program in the world. 1,200 square miles of permitted artificial reef zone off the coast of Alabama. So we only have 56 miles of linear coast, and we have 1,200 square miles of permitted artificial reef zone that goes out about 70 miles offshore.
Oh, wow.
So those areas go from 20 to 30 feet to several thousand feet in depth. And so over the history of the program, we started this in the 1950s. We deploy artificial reefs. Now, it started with some crazy things like car bodies and buses and washers and dryers, but we've expanded to where we have a much more robust and healthy system where we permit a private individual can go put a reef out, but we also invest in that reef zone. So we recently expanded it to get to 1,200 square miles, and in 2021 we added about 110 square miles to it. We put in the last year we put about 1,200 juvenile reefs out there. They're smaller reefs closer to shore that allow juvenile fish to the reef fish like red snapper, grouper, and things like that. They like very specific structures at different ages. We put some large gravel out there in certain areas for the babies to swim around in. It's amazing. You send a remotely operated vehicle down there and you see millions of little fish swimming around these rocks. And you're like, man, they're going to grow up and move to the next level reef that we put in the nearshore zone. And then we put larger reefs like what we call super pyramids that are 25-foot tall concrete beds with different holes and nooks and crannies, and what we call an amberjack pole that sticks out of the top, a metal pole, because amberjack like to swim around structures. We provide that for them. So at first they just attract fish, but over time they develop their own ecosystems. So we've learned how to develop those little ecosystems offshore of Alabama to ensure that we're creating habitat, because that's important. We want to create habitat so that we can grow more fish, not just catch fish. Those are two different things. And so we've deployed ships, we put army tanks, pieces of bridge structure. So things that would clog our landfills, and people say, oh, well, you're just turning the Gulf into a garbage dump. That's not it at all. Everything has to be very clean. It has to meet a very high standard. We, as a department division, inspect every item that goes out there, and we have a very high standard. We issue a permit. And so it's not junk. It's not a garbage dump out there. These are placed specifically to promote habitat development and for different species. So we're not just focused on one species. Red snapper is kind of the fish that we're known for here in Alabama. And we fought very hard to continue to ensure that we have a very vibrant and healthy red snapper fishery across the Gulf. And then our artificial reef zone even goes out, like I said, to thousands of feet of water. We have a rigs to reef program where if a gas or oil platform is to be decommissioned, we have a program that they can decommission it and clean it up, and they can turn it into a reef system offshore. So they can topple the portions. We like for them to leave the legs because the legs have already been there and developed their own ecosystem. So we don't want them to remove those legs. So it's been a great program here for several of the Gulf states, Louisiana, Alabama in particular. We've benefited from that program. And then we moved to our inshore artificial reef program. We're working on 3 more. So we'll have 37 sites in our inshore waters, which are inside Mobile Bay, the Mississippi Sound, the Perdido system, where inshore species and inshore anglers can go fish on those. And those are generally made up of like rocky bottoms, some oyster shells, and some things like that, so that we have so much effort that's going on in Alabama in fishing. Our fishing licenses keep going up every year. And so we have to make sure that we're providing the resource to handle that and the bag and size limits and things that can sustain that fishery. So by creating more habitat, we create more opportunities for people to go fishing. So those two things they occupy, I think about red snapper almost every day. I think about boating access, boat ramps, and fishing access. How do we get people to a shoreline to fish? How do we get them to a pier to fish? How do we provide that access? And how do we prevent it from being limited? And oysters, how do we keep that foundational critter in our system to keep it healthy so that all these other species can thrive?
Now, as a consumer of oysters, and unfortunately, I don't have as many as I would like to have in my system. I will take care of that in September. Take care of that. Obviously, from my perspective, boaters, anglers want to go out and catch good game fish, whether it's the red snapper, the grouper. I'm getting hungry, by the way. Um, who else, what other types of outdoor enthusiasts are enjoying the benefits of developing these new habitats, these inshore and offshore reef systems?
So, uh, bird watchers, birds, a lot of birds feed off of the different species that show up in our waters. So the more abundant fisheries you have and some of those other marine species that we have contributes to the ability for the birds to be able to feed. And we provide areas where they can nest. And so bird watching, Dolphin Island, Alabama is considered, we call it the birdiest place in America. It's a very, very popular spot. It's a jumping off point for several birds and butterflies to go to Mexico. So ensuring that we have a healthy waterway helps bird watchers, kayakers. That's probably one of the fastest growing recreational things around here is kayak. They paddle around to see things, but they also paddle around to go fishing. And so we have kayakers that go offshore fishing. They're catching fish. They're paddling miles out into the Gulf. And I
Oh
don't
boy.
know if it's what I would do, and they make their way back. And the kayaks of old where you just throw that baby on top of the car, those are gone. These are yacht kayaks that
Oh
they're
my.
putting in the water. So, and that's a great economical way for people to be able to enjoy all the waterways that we have and the different things we have. So it allows for people to kayak, and then just tourism in general. People get to come down and go stand on a pier, go stand on the shoreline, watch the dolphins frolic. It's a very common thing. We see dolphins pretty regular. Sometimes I forget how great that is to see that. We have manatees that come through our area, so
Oh
sometimes you get
wow.
need to see those. Sharks, believe it or not, people have this big fear of sharks, and we're seeing a lot more shark videos because drones. You can fly a drone over, you can get the sunlight just right. And you see that sharks are along our beaches all the time. They are very near people on a pretty regular basis. And so some people show these drone shots and they kind of want to fear monger. But really, to me, those are great educational opportunities to show you that they're there all the time. They know that you're in the water and you're not their food source. They're not coming up to you. They're not chasing you around. So I always kind of spin those videos to show the educational aspect that the sharks are there. It's their environment and they serve a very important role in what we do. So the beach goers get to go, they get to go to the beach. They get to go watch these crazy things that occur. They get to dig in the sand and see all the different critters that bubble up at night. You see the little kids with flashlights, and we have nesting turtles that show up here during the year. We help monitor that, and people get the opportunity to see where sea turtles come ashore and nest. And if they observe from a correct distance, sometimes they get the amazing opportunity to see turtles bubble up out of the sand and go to the water. So again, there's so many things that what we do impacts.
Mhm. I'm appreciating it as I'm listening to you. Is there's not only the science, the conservation, but it's really this continuous promotion of access to these water resources. I was reading some of the uh, articles that you shared with me, and I do appreciate those. And you've got, and imagine year after year, I mean, over many years, many of like the ramps and the piers, because of old age or because of the weather and the storms, they're constantly needing to be either fixed or replaced or refreshed. And what types of activities go into those kinds of access issues? I mean, is do you find that there's enough access resources for people, or or are you finding that you constantly are having to build more and more to satiate everybody's interest?
It is extremely difficult to provide the access. One, it's location, location, location. So you have to have the right place. Everybody wants to be on the water. And so they want to have a house on the water, and then they want to have access to the water to be able to put their boat in the water. And then people just want to go fish. So trying to provide access for all of those, we have to be able to find the real estate to put a boat ramp. We have to get the funding in place to put a boat ramp. And I say this jokingly, but semi-serious, is that boat ramps are a little bit like garbage dumps. Everybody knows you need them. You just don't always want it next door to you. So we do have a little bit of that user group conflict and some social issues that we have to work through. So we
Yeah.
try and be mindful of that. So what we use in Alabama to help maintain these boating access points is what we call sport fish restoration dollars. So that's money that comes from the federal government that is divided up based on the anglers that you have in your state. So ours is divided up freshwater and saltwater. So we have our own piece of the pie, so to speak. So those dollars are used to help provide access and to do research things. And that money comes from fuel and tackle tax so it's a user-based payment if you look at it that way. So if you're
Right.
buying green fuel, some of that tax then comes back to us so that we can use it to keep the boat ramps open, to expand the parking. And boat ramps are really more about parking than they are about the ramp. You got to
Right.
have nice ramps that are safe and accessible, but you have to be able to park those vehicles. And that's a challenge. It takes a lot of real estate to do that. We're
Yeah.
working on projects now, working with the city of Daphne, the town of Dauphin Island, Mobile County. We just finished a project with Fort Morgan, which is an unincorporated area of Baldwin County, to improve those access points. And then we also work with them to help with designs. So if a city or a county has an idea or they have some funding of their own, then we bring in our staff and we say, look, we've been messing up boat ramps for a lot of years. So now we know how to do it right. So let us give you some information. It's free. We're going to give you the specs and designs. And then I'm the people person. I tell them, I said, let me have the smart people come in and give you the specs. And I'm going to come in and tell you what people do at boat ramps and help you design a boat ramp that works well for the people that are going to use it. And believe it or not, that little bit is so helpful because we get caught up into, man, this is a good design. This looks pretty, or this does this. And I said, yeah, but when people drive their boats and trucks, this is what they do. And you've kind of messed that up for them, or you haven't made it efficient for them. So
Right.
that's it's a great team. And I'm so proud of the local area here that they've taken some oil spill money from Deepwater Horizon. We've been very blessed with the funding that has come, and they've really enhanced outdoor opportunities in the south part of the state where they're developing green spaces near the shoreline, preserving property. The state has bought a lot of land that will be in our Forever Wild program. So that will be forever set aside for access for the public. We love doing that. We have tens of thousands of acres across the state where we buy land and we put gun ranges, we put hiking trails, we put access points, just all the stuff that we do to give it back to the people of the state, or again, all of the country who come down to visit.
Sure. Now, speaking of coming down to visit, I'm going to put you on the spot for a little bit. And you're a director. You can handle this. Okay. If I'm coming down to the state, what is the one thing? And I'm sure it's hard, but what's that one thing? Like, Howard, when you come down here, you have got to do this. What's that? What's that one thing?
Wow, you are right. That is hard because I'm like a tourism fanatic. So, uh, to be honest with you, if you're just passing through the state of Alabama, slow down when you go across the Bayway, that interstate, or get off on what we call the causeway, which is Highway 90, the lower, slower road going across the bay. And now they're both parking lots at different times because there's a lot of people and the traffic can get bad.
Right.
And take the time to stop. And if you look south, that is the Mobile Bay system. That is this big expanse of water that has commerce. You can see ships. You can see ships with thousands of containers on it. You see ships with wood chips. You see ships with frozen chicken and things that are feeding the world. So you get to see the commerce coming up the Mobile Ship Channel. You can see shrimp boats working out around the area there. You can see commercial crab boats working their traps right near there. You can see the general public lined up along the side of the road with their fishing poles sitting on the tailgate of their trucks or the trunk of their cars. And then you look north, and that's America's Amazon, the Mobile Delta system. So you turn one way, it's the gateway to the Gulf of Mexico. You turn the other way, and it's America's Amazon, where again, the biodiversity is like no other in the country. And you can literally see all of that standing in the middle of the road. So stand to the side of the road, please. But
Okay.
an opportunity to see that. And you start thinking about how these two systems interact and the benefit that we have and how important this is and and I look at it sometimes. I have a camera system and I'll look around at different things and I'm like, wow, this is important. We got to make sure we take care of this. Or I get ideas from that, or I'll watch people. I said, that guy's messing that up for us. Send the guys out to catch him. But that's probably the one thing is slow down a minute and if you take 5 minutes and step out of the car and think about it, it's absolutely amazing to see those two systems there.
Fantastic. Well, I will commit when I do come down. I'm going to have, hopefully, knock on wood, a couple days before the conference and a couple days after to really take advantage of that. When you are not out there doing what you love to do, you're with your family, your friends, what's your go-to?
Oh, wow. So, I am an adult ADD maniac. So I'm a million different directions. So, believe it or not, I'm a fixer.
Okay.
So, I love people, hate crowds. So I love to be with people. I love helping people. It's just what I do. Whether I'm at church, where my wife and I spend a lot of time. Uh, I love mentoring younger people, and
Mm.
each year, apparently, I'm getting older, and so they're getting younger. But
I hate when that
my
happens, by the
mis-
way.
I get to share my mistakes, my successes, and try and make life better for folks. And so, uh, anything I can do to where I get to, again, I'm a people person, I'm a social animal. So when I get to get out, whether I get to go fishing, whether I get to go to some event where people are going to have access to boat shows, I like to go to those and talk to people and educate people. I love to talk about my job. Just ask my wife. She probably knows as much or more about my job than I do because she's heard everything more than once. So my go-to is really just to spend time with people. Most people like to get away from people. I kind of go to people, which is, but I don't like the crowds, but I like people,
All
love
right.
people.
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. Scott, when you had filled out our intake form, we had a couple of features. One of those is the aha moment. The other one is the insight to go. And I'd like to, hopefully, I actually think you've already talked about both of these, but we'll do it again more
We-
formally. But the aha moment is just your opportunity to kind of look back for a second as were sharing, as you come across the waterway and the mobile and the highway or the slow way, and just do some slow observation. When you've had a chance to kind of slow down and look at your career and the work that you have uh, been involved in, and this love of what you're doing, what's been your aha moment? Like, wow, I get to do this.
so I think I mentioned in the thing that every day is an aha moment for me. This morning, it's a Monday and I've been gone a week. So things are always a little bit more manic on those Mondays.
Yeah.
And I met with some staff. We talked about some projects and we came up with some solutions and some paths forward. And so I'm like, that's an aha. That's like, man, the guys did this and it's going to make this project better. It's going to make this resource better. So I get to have those probably more than most people because we do a lot of things. My staff is absolutely amazing. They do so many things, but sometimes as simple as answering the phone and somebody has a question. And sometimes people are angry and I get to have that conversation with them and explain to them, here's the why, here's my side of the story. Tell me your side of the story. And we get to walk away, maybe not in agreement, but with an understanding. And
Sure.
so that's an aha moment that I can walk away and say, listen, we did good today. We met this need or we did this project. So yeah, I think, to narrow down one aha because I'm a forward leaning kind of person. So I'm always, what's the next moment? We
Okay.
cheerlead that one. I'm not going to dwell on this one. I'm going to love it. I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to remember it, but let's go find another one. So
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Our next feature is what we call the insight to go. So this is, and I think you've answered some of this already, but as you are able to share and gift to others about your journey, the impact you have had, whether it's in the Coast Guard, growing up in Kentucky, working your way through the hierarchy of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, what insight to go would you give to our listeners about why Alabama, why Gulf Shores, why the Department of Conservation, Natural Resources, and its mission would be your insight to go that you'd like to share?
well, I'd like to mention just real quickly that we're in a unique position in Alabama that our Department of Conservation commissioner was an officer. So he is the only commissioner, I think, in the history of our department who came up through the ranks, so to speak. So, and I followed in his shoes. We were officers together here in Alabama, in the Marine Resources Division. He worked his way up, and next thing the governor asked him to be the boss. And so that's so he's had a passion, and it's been a blessing for me. And I said, it's been a God called thing, I think, to be able to follow in the footsteps of a person who we share this passion and that we work well together. We butt heads sometimes, but that's okay. My wife and I kind of butt heads sometimes, but that we create a culture, I think, of enthusiasm for what we do. And I tell my son, my youngest son is, I tell him, I said, quit looking for talent, go find a passion, find something that's in you, and then you never go to work. You got to make enough money to feed yourself. I get it. But if you have a passion, you don't go to work. I never go to work. I never wake up and think, man, I got to go to work today. It doesn't happen. It's not in my vocabulary. And so, like I mentioned the mousetrap theory earlier, I said, if I can get people to look at every day of how do I make things better? And some days they can't, I get it. But there may come that day where the aha comes in. I know how to make this better. And if I can walk out the door from here and know that's how people feel about working here for the Marine Resources Division, for working for the state of Alabama, I remind our license clerks, I said, you're the face of our division. You're the person that people see. They come in to buy their license. So when you smile at them, when you give them a tidbit of information, that's a win for me as the boss. And
Right.
so thank you. So that's it. I think if I can encourage people to face every day like there's no tomorrow, man, just go for it. Go for it with gusto.
I love it. I love it. If our listeners would like to learn more about you and the work of the Marine Resources Division, Department of Conservation, Natural Resources, where's the best places for them to go?
So naturally, we have a website called outdooralabama.com. There's a tremendous amount of information on there. And then also we're on the other social media things, Facebook, Twitter. There's a YouTube channel where you can go watch some videos. So those are all out there. It's an easy search. And I think you'll probably post some information at the end.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, we'll provide the backlink to the website, Outdoor Alabama, as well as to the social sites. And you've also shared a number of some of the media, the stories, and some of the projects that are being worked on by the department, and we'll have those links as well. Scott, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. I certainly hope I will. I can almost guarantee, if not you, somebody else in your organization will be presenting, speaking at the Outdoor Writers Association of America's annual conference.
Yeah, I plan
Down.
on trying to come by and visit you guys.
Oh,
I think
I
it's
hope.
a great event.
I hope you do. It will be a pleasure to shake your hand, and just really appreciate you taking the time to get people excited about coming down to South Alabama. And I'm like, I can't believe I lived there a year and I never made it down. So I'm going to take advantage of it. And I just cannot wait. And
We'd love to
just
have you. We welcome everyone with open arms. So come enjoy the great outdoors in Alabama.
fantastic. Well, listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Scott Bannon. He is the director of the Marine Resources Division, the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This is a learning episode. And not only that, but we're learning from somebody who is 100% all in and being passionate about the work that he does. And I even hesitate saying the work, about what he gets to do when he wakes up every morning and goes to bed every night. He gets to look back and say, God, I love my job. And that, to me, as a coach, I think that is very special. So, I mean, if this is indicative of his team, the folks that, as he was the customer facing of this organization, that says a lot, because the customer experience, that's what it's all about. It's being made to feel special. And I think in our conversation with Scott today, that certainly comes across. So I can only imagine what the rest of the team, the enforcement, the scientists are all doing. So, and the folks that are at the cashier taking the money for the license, and however that works, everybody has just a significant role in delivering this wonderful experience. Now, do go out to the Outdoor Alabama website, and we'll provide the backlink there. We're also going to provide links to the social sites at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. As for us, you can find us on outdooradventureseries.com. We are also on LinkedIn and Facebook. We have an Outdoor Adventure Series page, and you can find us on wherever podcast directory you listen to your podcast, and we'll provide links to that as well. Now, I do want to thank Gulf Shores and Orange Beach Tourism for sponsoring this episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series, introducing us to Scott, and just a fantastic episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now, to begin planning your beach vacation, getaway, or outing, visit the Gulf Shores and Orange Beach Tourism website at gulfshores.com. Until next time, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there and have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.